Hey guys, what is up? I'm Twigloo, and today I'll be teaching you how pros win their fights. I analyzed some of the best pro players when it comes to winning fights to provide you guys some common habits that they use in their gameplay, and I will break them down so you guys can understand them better. So to start off, let's talk about the importance of aim in Fortnite. So I'm sure, as you're already aware, having good aim is crucial to winning fights, but there are so many players who have bad aim and neglect to train it, and it is so painfully obvious. Even a lot of pro players have bad aim. Take this clip of Calc for example. So in Fortnite, there are three important types of aim. You have your long to mid-range tracking, short-range tracking, and click shots, or flicks. Long to mid-range tracking is useful to get tags at the start of the fight and to confirm kills on weak opponents trying to escape. It is also useful for beaming kids out of the sky in endgame. Short-range tracking, which is where in my opinion most Fortnite players are lacking the most, is for close-range fights with their AR or SMG. This is a skill that is difficult for players to grasp naturally because you have to track your opponent through quick movements. It is important to note that you can also use short-range tracking to aim with your shotgun, but most players prefer to use the third option, which I will refer to as click shots or flips. This is where Fortnite players excel the most. Pretty much all pro players have impressive aim in this category, even Calc. The reason Calc can get away with subpar long-range ADS aim is because it is very forgiving. If you miss your shots, it is not that big of a deal, you just miss out on a bit of damage, and also because of Bloom, there's a bit of randomness to it. Click shots or flicks, however, are the least forgiving because of the close-range metagame. When you can hit your opponent with a shotgun, they can probably hit you just as hard. This is especially true when you're up close with an opponent in a 50-50, which happens pretty frequently. You have to make sure you hit a high damage pump shot in order to win the fight. The benefits of being skilled in the tracking categories of aim is that it weakens your opponent, which allows you to put pressure on them at the beginning of the fight, be the aggressor, and end the fight quicker. There is no reason not to train your tracking aim because even though it may not be as important as click shots or flick aiming, it greatly increases your chance of winning a fight and especially confirming a kill. Some of the best players in terms of aim are controller players. Take Reet for example. Now, it is argued that PC players have an advantage because of their increased potential of their mechanics, yet Reet is arguably the best W keyer in Fortnite currently. In my opinion, the main reason for this is because of his absolutely incredible aim. This guy hits so many 200 pumps, it's unbelievable. This guy ends fights before you even have a chance to do anything, and that should be persuasive enough to tell you how important aim is. At this point in Fortnite, pretty much every competitive player's mechanics are good enough to compete with the pros. Aim and decision making is what really sets the pros above the rest of the pack. The last point I want to make about having good aim is that it increases your confidence considerably. Whenever I first started playing PC, my aim was terrible. But after about 2 years of playing on keyboard and mouse and pouring in tons of time into Kovacs, I am much more confident that I can win any fights that I get into, and confidence is extremely important when it comes to winning fights. I will provide a link in the description of an aim guide you can use created by the credible aiming coach, Aimer7. The next topic I'd like to discuss is the importance of ending fights quickly. Players have gotten so good at prolonging fights and surviving for long periods of time that ending fights quickly has become increasingly difficult and thus increasingly important. To start things off, let's talk about piece control. A lot of you are already aware of what this is. It's placing your builds before your opponent. The reason this is so important is because you can block your enemies from trying to escape, and you can establish control of the builds to edit on your opponent. Let's take a look at a couple of clips that demonstrate what good piece control looks like. Here Reet blocks his opponent off with a cone, preventing him from escaping and allowing him to confirm the kill. Clicks here, ramps off his opponent and then places a floor, and then even walls off his opponent to prevent him from escaping. This would have allowed him to clean up the kill immediately if his opponent hadn't reacted by editing his ramp downwards. Arkram shows incredible piece control by editing a window, boxing his opponent, and putting in a cone. The next point of ending fights quickly is exploiting into an enemy's box. This is typically a good idea if you know your opponent is already weak due to previous tags and you have an HP advantage. This is especially important for players who play on a higher ping as well, as if you play on a higher ping, it may be more difficult to grab your opponent's wall. Pro players can find many opportunities to exploit into an enemy's box. Take this creative approach from Kyriake, for example, where he swings on a wall to weaken it as he drops down, places a ramp behind him, and exploits through. There's a couple of popular exploit methods currently, such as the ramp exploit, the cone exploit, where you edit it into a ramp, crash pad exploits, and shockwave exploits. There's plenty of others, but these are the most common and practical options as of now. To highlight the importance of exploiting, many pro players will include a mobility item in their inventory to get into another player's box. Additionally, it serves a purpose to decrease the distance between you and your opponent. For me, Mongrel stands out as being really effective with his mobility items. Look at how effectively he uses bouncers in this fight, for example. Now we're getting to a topic that really separates the pros from the average competitive player, and that is having strong fundamentals. You may be asking, what do you mean by fundamentals? I'd loosely define them as your personal responses to a given situation or stimulus. We can almost think of them as an algorithm for a given scenario. Mars OW, the player with the most points in Arena in Fortnite currently, has such strong fundamentals that he can just casually talk to his chat while he's in intense fighting situations. But fundamentals is more than just being comfortable with your mechanics. It's also about your decision making. For example, what would you do in this situation, where you've beamed the player and now you want to apply pressure and finish the fight quickly? Do you have a specific plan that you will follow, or do you blindly approach the player? Will you steal the opponent's wall? His roof? Will you just continuously spray your SMG or AR? Will you drop down in front of the wall and bait an edit? We can apply this to another scenario. You take the opponent's wall. What do you do now? What kind of edit will you make? Will you make a Dorito edit for a right hand peek? A window? Will you place a ramp or cone in the opponent's box? Which one? Or will you just edit and take a shot? What will you do if your opponent responds by editing out the back or the side? Or take this example. You've just been beamed by an enemy. What do you do now? Do you box up or do you tarp to natural cover? Do you create layers of protection? In which direction? What do you do if your opponent closes distance on you? What will you do if he tries to take your wall? All of these situations elicit a response from a player, and one thing that pro players do very well is to respond appropriately given a certain circumstance. Another fundamental skill is using your movement to give yourself a right hand peek. Now, it's been established that controller players clearly have better movement given their 360-degree potential compared to mouse and keyboards players' 8 degrees. However, keyboard players can have impressive movement as well. One player that sticks out to me is FaZe Dubs. His movement is so smooth and precise that it almost looks like he's on controller. Movement may seem like a small skill to improve on, but it makes the biggest difference. Setting yourself up for right-hand peeks, dodging shots, increasing your efficiency while building, these are all benefits of improving your movement. The last thing I want to emphasize is the importance of creating your own fundamentals based on what works for you and sticking with them. Look at how Kyriake is in a dire situation in Storm, and yet he maintains his fundamentals by making a Dorito edit when 99% of us would have done a simpler edit because of the awkward angle. By improving your fundamentals, you will become more comfortable and confident in any situation, but you must stick to them like glue. If there's one thing that separates a pro player from your average competitive player, it's being able to process information quickly. The topic I'd like to discuss now is the importance of thinking ahead in fights. Pro players just play the game at a faster level, and there's no debating it. The king of thinking ahead and processing information is, in my opinion, Energy Clicks. This guy is hard to analyze because it is so difficult to keep up with what he's doing, which is also why he's so entertaining to watch. I mean, just look at this clip. Players that showcase thinking ahead are players like Calc and Mitro. Look at this short clip of Calc pumping a guy and immediately turning 180 degrees, placing a ramp behind him, and boxing up. He actually ended up killing the enemy, but he was so focused on what he had to do next that he still followed through with his actions. Mitro, on the other hand, is so good at reading his opponent and knowing when they will edit on him that he can pre-fire an enemy with absolute ease. How does he do this? It's actually quite simple. Whenever Mitro overextends to take a wall, for example, he puts himself in a vulnerable position. He will use this vulnerable position to his advantage by pre-firing the opponent while building to put himself in a better position. This shows that he's always thinking one step ahead. Every pro player plays a different game than the average competitive player, and that is just the cold hard truth. If you want to get better at thinking ahead, you need to work on your fundamentals to such an extent that it becomes second nature. That way you're able to focus on everything else that is happening in the game. The final topic I want to discuss is a player's individuality. We're playing Fortnite, a game that fosters creativity and innovation. There is no right or wrong way to play it. I may have been making it sound like pro players are just these gods that can do no wrong, but that is completely false. Every player is fallible, and pros, just like every other player, make plenty of mistakes. So, to inspire some creativity, I'll show you guys some quick examples of strategies that aren't seen very often, but are very effective. Here we have one of my favorite players, Kyriake, placing a ramp to make the opponent think he's playing defensively, only to open it up and pump the guy. Here he makes box to the right, then makes a creative top left edit, and he finishes it off by being very aggressive. Mitro here creates an unorthodox arch edit, which prevents his opponent from pickaxing his wall and stealing it, only to pump the guy right in the face. And guys, as a final thought, I'd just like to encourage everyone to do what works best for them. It's completely fine to want to play like your favorite pro, but take everything with a grain of salt. Just because it works for them doesn't mean it will work for you. Embrace your differences and individuality, look at yourself critically, study your strengths and weaknesses, and improve. Do not be afraid to try something new. And on that note, I'll be heading out. Let me know in the comments section if you found this video helpful, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it.